my father and I had a complicated relationship.
Mine too.
My dad never dragged me out of a monastery, right? No. My dad never, shooed away the theater troupe that I had decided to run away with, et cetera, et cetera. But, I mean, Lestat's dad beat him. My father never beat. I mean, that's not entirely true. My father did. He spanked me in ways that were absolutely over the line.
The Articulate Coven is the original, unofficial fan podcast and community for Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire, The Vampire Chronicles, The Lives of the Mayfair Witches, and the Immortal Universe from AMC and AMC+.
Welcome to the Articulate Coven. We are your hosts. I'm Joel.
I'm Ashley.
And we are the Articulate Coven. We are the unofficial fan podcast and community for Anne Rice's Immortal Universe, including Interview with the Vampire, the Vampire Lestat, the Mayfair Witches, and the Talamasca show coming, as well as all the books and the previous movie adaptations, et cetera, et cetera. Ashley, tonight, though, it's a book club. We're going to be talking about parts 6 and 7 of the Vampire Lestat novel.
Possibly I think part 7's probably, it's one of my favorite parts of this book. I really, really like it. And I think it's why a lot of people like Marius. I think this version of Marius that we meet, this is the reason why a lot of people who have big love for Marius love him, because this version of him is very well-rounded, very like calm. He's not being a dick, like he's being. Yeah, this is the best version of Marius. He also doesn't have an underage boyfriend, so we prefer this version of Marius as well.
Yeah, there's no team of boys painting for him in the background anywhere in these scenes. I'm going to skip ahead slightly to the opening of that part. I want to share this note that I made. When we get to this in the TV series, when we see this scene where Marius first picks Lestat up and brings him back to this, mansion and island that he's living on, if Daniel Hart does not use the same cheesy ass telenovela romance music that he used in season 2 when Armand and Louis first meet, I'm going to be angry.
Or like a new spin on it. I think it's
Listen, Lestat is such a fangirl in those moments. He's like, he was so strong and beautiful. And the villagers cheered his coming and going.
And here, let me talk about all the things that I love about him that are also things that we share, features we share.
Yes.
He was dressed in red velvet. He looked like a god. This long,
he was 6 feet tall, which is very good in the 1700s.
Oh, his mane of hair, white and gold.
Before we get into it, I do want to say a couple of things. First of all, thank you to our patrons, and especially the Queen of the Damned herself, Nancy Ward.
Yes, girl. Thank you.
So if you're like, what now? We launched a Patreon. I didn't talk about it on the show yet.
In the dark of the night.
We did. Well, sort of. So I set it up, and Ashley and I talked about it. And I've actually, Ashley, you and I haven't even talked about this. I made one tweak to it since we set it up. And we'll talk about that right now. So here's the deal. We have had a lot of people that have said, hey, what can we do for the show? Or how can we, help you guys, whatever. Also, we've had a lot of questions about whether or not we're going to go on hiatus now that we're in between TV series. We don't want to. I enjoyed doing this. Don't you, Ashley?
Yeah. We're having fun.
Yes.
We're having a great time. These are wonderful, fun conversations that I look forward to every week.
So one way that could help make that happen is for everybody to sort of chip in a few bucks. And that's what we're asking. If you are not in a position to do so, I genuinely don't want you to like shuffle things around to make the Patreon part of your deal.
Or even be stressed about it. That is not a thing.
Yeah.
Like, do not.
Because here's the deal. Everything will still stay exactly where it is. You'll still get the show in all of your audio apps. You'll still get the show on YouTube if you want it there. We are going to try to give it early for the patrons. And so like the podcast itself will go out on Sundays for the patrons, and it'll go out on Mondays for the regular listeners. And our other videos, we're going to try to put those on like a week early cadence. But basically, you've already missed the content that you were maybe going to theoretically miss in this switch up this week on YouTube. I didn't post quite as many videos this week to YouTube as we would have otherwise. Which, speaking of, here's what's coming this next week. Ashley's already done a great reaction to the Collider.
Y'all, that interview is so good.
right? Honestly, I got like 3 questions in, and I'm like, nobody was lying when they said these last. I did like the TV guide one a week ago. That one was great.
Yeah.
I'm working this week on the CBR one, which is really good, and the Collider one. Why did they save the best for last, Ashley?
I mean, well, probably so that it would leave us wanting more. And this left me like I'm like, I want to be friends with this gal that's doing this interview. She's so sharp, asking great questions. It was fantastic. I was pumped to be talking about that one.
I mean, she starts the interview with what scene in season 2 was more difficult than you imagined it was going to be when you went into it. Like, what? Out the gate. Like, instead of like, hey guys, what are you wearing today? Like, are you going to be in season 3 too? Those aren't bad questions. But.
Are you having fun? Are you having fun at Comic-Con? Yeah, no, like she jumped right in. It's great. I had a really good time watching that. Because I put it off because I knew I was doing a reaction video to it, so I had avoided it. So
yeah, so Ashley's Collider interview will go up this week for both the patrons and the YouTube folks just a few days later. My CBR video will go up this week for patrons. It'll go up next week for the regular YouTube viewers.
Love it.
We're also doing, I started watching the original Dark Shadows series.
I'm so glad
Ashley.
that's what you picked.
Okay. I wanted to do something solo because I figured, hey, I can do more of these than anybody else can, honestly, just because of the nature of my job and the fact that I'm the one that's putting them together. So let me see how that would work. And I looked at a couple of different things, but several people had mentioned Dark Shadows for what Kelly and I should watch together.
I was one of them. I suggested that too, yeah, because I love it.
Have you ever seen that original Dark Shadows?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I had not. I guess it wasn't airing on any of the channels that were on my cable package, maybe, or something when I was a kid. I don't know.
You would have had to look for it. Like the only reason it was on my radar at all was again because of my awesome friend Courtney, who introduced me to so much fun nerdy shit in the 90s. The only reason it was on my radar was because she watched it, and so she got me into watching it. And it's very 70s. It feels a little campy, but I don't think it's on purpose. And yeah, it's fun. It's a really fun show to watch.
I've got one episode up already for the patrons. It's going to go up on the Saturday morning after this episode for the regular YouTube users. So check that out. But one of the things that the Patreon account will let us do specifically for those reaction videos is that YouTube makes you cut it down so tight so that you don't burst copyright strikes, right? So like even my first Dark Shadows video, it was like 25 minutes for the patron, and then I put it up on YouTube and it was like 15 minutes, and they still knocked something, so I had to take like one more little thing out of it. So anyway, that's what it's mostly about. It's so that we can do a more full reaction video and you guys can enjoy them. Here's the change that I made from when we first set it up. The accounts start at $2 a month. If you contribute $2 a month, that's a big thank you to us. It helps us keep going every week and makes this all a lot easier. And you'll get access to all of that stuff on the Patreon account. So whether it's the early videos, whether it's the full reaction videos, you get everything for $2.
I'll pick something out to do, and I know that Brett and I want to do one too. So we got to pick something and figure out the logistics for that. What did you and Kelly decide on?
So it's funny, we haven't picked one permanently, although I made a suggestion the other day that nobody's talked about. We're going to do one more trailer video, I think, like we did before. Excellent. Where we watch 2 or 3 trailers and react to them. She watched a series a couple of years ago, or maybe just like even more recently than that. I think it's on Peacock. It's called Wolf Like Me, I think is the name of it. It's a werewolf show. It's got Josh Gad is not the werewolf, and the werewolf is a woman who is a really well-known actress. What is her name? Yeah, it features Josh Gad, and Isla Fisher is the main character. So, or I guess Josh Gad's technically the main character. Anyway, it's a female werewolf story. Not to spoil anything, but like that's the deal. And she's watched it. I haven't, which I think is an interesting dynamic. And as far as supernatural stuff goes, it's going to be pretty rare probably. And it's only 2 seasons of that show. They're maybe going to bring it back for a 3rd season, but it's not like available yet. So she and I talked about that the other day. I was like, what if we did Wolf Like Me, like as a quick one? Anyway, we're going to do the trailer
fun.
for that. Yeah,
Awesome.
we're going to do the trailer for that and talk about it.
So when you guys decide, we'll pick one after you guys do.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, great. So, but anyway, all of that stuff will go up on the Patreon account early for patrons. $2 a month is all it takes to get access to everything. And then the other thing that will do for you is even on our regular videos, if you're watching them on YouTube, but you don't care for the ads, well, there's no ads on Patreon. So there you go. And all you got to do is go to articulatecoven.com/join, and that works. You can join right there. And hey, even if you're not in a position to pay, why don't you go ahead and join the account as a free patron? They'll let you do that. You can sign up for free, because that'll be a good way for us to contact you in the future directly with an announcement like, hey, we're going to do this thing coming up, and everybody will get a message about that. You can see it on the Patreon account, and it won't matter about algorithms on whether or not you miss it.
God,
there you
that's
go.
a great idea. And if you're not in that way too, if you're not in the Facebook group, which is where a lot of announcements hit first, that's another great way to kind of stay in touch with us too. For people that don't mess with those things. I get it. Social media is tough.
So there's the business stuff out of the way. Go check that out. If there's the $2 gets you in, $5 means that you get to vote on future topics. So like we're about to go into Midnight Mass, right? We're about to go into Midnight Mass. And in the future, when we are looking for a topic for in between the TV season, well, for instance, there should be at least one more thing of several weeks between Midnight Mass and Mayfair. Maybe a couple of things, depending upon the schedule release. So,
because they haven't given a date yet, I don't think.
They just said early 2025.
Early,
our assumption is that it's going to be roughly January, just like it was last time. But like, who knows? We don't know that for certain yet. So anyway, if you want to be one of the group that gets to vote on what those topics are, $5 a month gets you into that level. For $10 a month, you get to suggest the topics. So and vote on them as well. We've also got a $50 a month level. If you're a business or a brand or something and you'd like to promote your thing in the show, that's a level at which you can get 2 ads a year.
We'll pimp you out.
Yeah, we'll pimp you out. So let us know about that. And again, it's all at articulatecoven.com/join. Okay, enough of the selling.
We're done with that.
This week we're still not wrapping up, honestly, because I went and looked. The epilogue for Interview with the Vampire is pretty short, but then there's quite a lot about the concert. And then we want to talk probably a little bit overall about the novel. I'd love to get more of your feedback into the show on that next episode. So we will do one more wrap-up episode for TVL in 2 weeks after we do Only Lovers Left Alive next week.
Which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, movie night next week. I am too. That neither one of us have seen it, which is again rare in the supernatural genre, right? Like, so all right. But let's talk about our beloved vampire and his
awkward breakup with his
mother.
Mom.
yeah. Like, what last week you said?
Sorry, it didn't work out with your mom. Yeah,
it's so perfect, because that's the name of this chapter. Like in the book, it's called, I say chapter. It's so, God, this is one of those places where I'm like, this was one of the books where she had an editor. Why didn't somebody fix the structure of this thing? She's got parts and she's got chapters
within the parts,
and it's like,
which
man,
is fine,
just like do the thing. Anyway, this is the Vampire Lestat Part 6. And it's like on the road to Cairo, right? From Paris to Cairo. Right off the top, they're saying goodbye to the Coven. They don't really say goodbye to Nikki, because Nikki's already soured on them at this point.
Yes. Nikki's Nickying.
Oh yeah, he is Nickying right up top, isn't he? Yeah. But they're saying goodbye to the Coven and to Armand. And Lestat says, and as we said our farewells, I believe that Nicholas and the little Coven had every chance for survival, and that Armand and I were friends.
You're such a dumbass. Everything's just fun. I'm leaving everyone in a very good mental and emotional position.
I mean, we talked about it last week. Like, Armand is like this in the 2 chapters or the 2 parts before this, right? Like, he's just...
Right.
Throwing everything at the wall to see what he can do to work with these
Let's remember that this is a 15-year-old guy. He's
a stinky little shit.
He smells bad. God, 15-year-olds are gross, especially boys. Worse.
They really are. They're so bad. Like, fresh out of, like, he showered. I'm not talking about a specific 15-year-old right now. He showered last night, got into bed, got up this morning and is unpleasant smelling. And I'm just like, what did you do? It's not like you jogged.
Teaching Summer Theater Academy was like, Jesus Christ, we'd have to have so many talks. Anyway, back on track. Armand's all over the place because Armand's always all over the place. And he's just the kind of guy that's going to cut your ex-boyfriend's hands off to see if that makes him feel better.
Ain't that the truth? It's funny. The one slight abbreviation or sidetrack here. Kelly this morning, she and I were talking about something about the show, and she goes, that's something we haven't seen yet. And I was like, what? She goes, they haven't bathed. Do they bathe in the books? And I'm like, I mean, not that much, actually. Like, yes, there are scenes, at least a scene or two in every novel where Lestat like luxuriously bathes. I remember, and I don't remember what book this is in, but I remember somewhere where he like scrapes his skin and he makes a big deal about like exfoliating with a scraper or something, and how like he, the fresh, clean smoothness or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, it does happen.
It right out. I think, I feel like maybe there's a bath in Pandora, but I could be making that up.
It's not often.
No,
they don't do it very often. I do wonder if these vampires are smelly.
It's not a Witcher type situation. You're not catching him in the tub as often. So I think she was secretly
wishing for a little more naked Sam. That's right. I was like, she's like, how can I get this man with his clothes off more often? Actually, in season 3,
let's bathe. Let's keep it clean, fellas. I'm all for it.
So I love, though, that as soon as they leave town, Lestat just starts Banksying his way to the Middle East, He's just like...
That's so true. What a great way to phrase that.
The Coven just told him, like, one of the laws is don't use our names.
Yeah, we really don't like that. Turns out...
Dear Marius the Vampire...
Your friend Lestat. And he draws a little picture of himself so that everyone knows what he looks like, too.
I am 6 foot tall, which is very good these days.
Very tall for a man from my time. Oh, God.
Okay, so they meet so many vampires in this section that I just honestly forgotten about. Okay, and yet Louis asks, and Claudia asks, and Lestat's like, nope, there aren't many. And they're all very evil. They're all very cruel. You don't want to mess them. You don't want to meet them. Like, he dances to Sam Hain with some very pleasant folks in Rome. And they're like, come back anytime.
Yeah, come hang out, friend. Yeah, no, the fuckery of this adventure that he has, and that he just refuses to tell them anything about it. Now, granted, we're going to get to Marius's like, do not tell them anything about any of this. Don't do it. So I guess that could be his excuse, but he's not a rule follower, and it's not like he fucking does everything that Marius tells him not to do anyway. So what the fuck? Why couldn't you just tell them... The fuckery that could have been avoided. The fuckery that could have been avoided if Lestat was like, let me introduce you to my Roman vampire friends.
Okay, so I'm doing a rewatch of season 1 right now to make some videos for the YouTube channel and for the patrons called 5 Things You Missed in each episode. I wanted to do something in alignment with the Netflix release. It's out on Netflix. Season 1's out on Netflix right now. So anyway, I did season 2 the other day, and there's a moment early in season 2, in episode 2, where Lestat is trying to woo Louis back into his good graces. And he says, why don't we take a trip? Why don't we go to Rome? And Louis begs off, and he's like, I can't go to Rome. I got a job. I got a business to run, whatever. But like, which also
shit to do.
You're a fabulously wealthy... I mean, I guess he doesn't know at this point exactly how wealthy Lestat is, but still. Anyway, it's so absurd every time that Louis like, we got things to do. And Lestat's like, we're fucking vampires.
We don't have anything to do.
But...
Better if we don't do shit.
Yeah, right? But he asked him to go to Rome. And I did think, I was like, well, what's the plan? Like, why is Rome so... And I guess... Theoretically, this coven might... I mean, I don't know if they lasted until the 1900s.
Right, but...
Because they did... That's the thing in the novels, is that they modernized, whatever that means, right? But they would still do the rituals, and they still stayed together as a group. But they thought the French coven, the Parisian coven, had been ridiculous for... Like, why were they still living under the cemeteries and whatnot,
right, Right. Well, you could just live amongst the people and have yourself a very nice time.
I don't know. Like...
Just keep
How
it
different-
discreet. Keep it.
How different would things have gone if
Demure.
Lestat had just taken him to Europe?
Oh man,
You know?
my God, like that's a lot to unpack. If only Lestat had ... ellipses should be the name of something.
Okay, let's talk about Nikki's puppet theater. So we're
Oh,
getting
I
these.
love this.
First of
So
all,
creepy.
we did our fancy word for a novel that's written in letters, but we get a great section of letters here when the French coven is writing to Lestat
Yes.
and telling him how things are going while he's traveling around. Okay, they describe this idea that all of the vampires pretend to be puppets, and they're on strings and they move in this mechanical way. Like,
I love it.
yes.
It's so fucking creepy, and I can just picture it so vividly.
Well, okay. Do you remember you saw Mithrigan, right? The movie last year about the little killer robot girl,
Oh yes,
Megan.
yes,
I
yes,
call
I
it
did.
Mithrigan
Yes.
because there's a 3 in the title.
Mithrigan. I did see Mithrigan.
All right. The moment when she does the dance thing, like she like throws her arms up or something and then like waves side to side. Anyway, there's a moment in the dancing where, and you and I talked about it even, I think when the trailer came out, like, oh my God, it looked like that's what I imagine Claudia hunting like, right? In the books.
Oh yeah. Like, yeah, it's creepy. Just the idea of people moving like puppets. That the idea of I saw a really creepy Tales from the Dark Side, I think it was, when I was a kid, where it was like this ventriloquist, and he had this dummy, and he had this dummy puppet, and that he was very famous, but he was also becoming very like disenchanted with his whole existence. And it turns out that it was his twin that he had absorbed was on his hand. He had a hand twin, and that was his puppet. It was horrifying. But that's what shit like that, like creepy puppets, scary movement, that unnatural, inhuman kind of movement is so creepy and awful to me.
Man,
And I love it.
absorbed twins are a twist that I am always down for.
Oh, my God.
Anytime you can, I guess, what's the Stephen King novel? Is it The Dark Half?
The Dark Half, yeah.
I think that was the first one that I had read that was like that, and it was like,
Ooh.
this is a thing that can happen.
This is
I mean, not like that, but
right.
Anyway,
it is. It's a great trope. Woo. Yuck. Yucca.
Okay, and of course, the other thing though that we hear about Nicky at this point is he's trying to make new vampires left and right.
Left and right.
It's interesting. They sort of took that for Claudia, like in season 1, the experiments that she does in season 1 of the TV show.
With the bodies
that's
all
not
over
really
her
a thing
bedroom and bits.
It's not exactly a thing in the book. Like she
No.
doesn't try to make vampires in the book.
No, she's clearly too small in the book. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not even a thing. I don't even think she would have enough blood in her body to physically be able to turn someone else into it. Like,
either.
yeah, I think
literally
that's
think
like,
it's a volume issue.
yeah, it's science, y'all. It's fucking science.
Okay. I love the part where Lestat starts reading. Like Lestat learns Latin on
Yes.
the way to Cairo, right?
Yes.
And so, which by the way, his mother still doesn't fucking
teach him to read.
God, I'm like, I gave you eternal life. Bitch, get a book.
Help me get
God.
hooked on phonics. Stop. Why is she
Okay.
so awful?
But he does start reading, and he decides that the Osiris story is about a vampire god. And she's like, Lestat is really, will you stop, please?
Oh, my
It's
sweet
not about
summer
you.
child. Everything
was
is
funny.
about me.
Osiris is actually sort of about him.
Right. It's so fucking stupid. I love it. I love it. He just that only makes him more of a brat, more of like a little shit, because he gets proven right too many times. He'll be so absurd, and it'll all be based in his ego, and then he'll accidentally be right, and we have to deal with what comes next, which is always great, but still.
He does it later when he's in Marius's house. Hang on, I'm trying to find the note that I made. Where is it? Oh, yeah. He goes, it was the last note that I had for that section. He goes, when I opened my eyes, I had an idea.
Oh.
And you're just like, again,
Please think twice. Think
yeah,
twice.
somebody posted the meme about like Lestat being like, "Hey friends, should I do this?" Marius, you shouldn't do that, Lestat. Armand, you shouldn't do that, Lestat. Louis, I don't think you should do that, Lestat. Lestat, oh, I did it.
I did it.
Y'all come help me.
Yeah, which is like the next 3 books.
Yeah, pretty much, honestly. So this is the time. This is where Gabby starts ghosting him too. Gabrielle starts just like deuces. My favorite point in the whole book, honestly, might be she's gone for 2 months. Like again, when she leaves, it's not like she says goodbye. She just reading,
wanders off.
and then she's just not there again that day, and not the next day, and then whatever. At one point, she's gone for 2 whole months. And it's not like she came home. He's walking around in town, and she just happens to be in the street in front of him suddenly. Like, oh, hey.
We just ran into
She
each
goes,
other.
"Hey, is your father still alive?" And he goes, yes, but he's very ill. And she goes, "Don't go see him. Just forget about him." And then ditches again.
The actual audacity of that, too, to be like, your father's a dick. You shouldn't go visit him. Bye!
Yeah, man. Like, what? I mean, I honestly, like, she is so, I get now on this section in particular, revisiting this section made me understand why literally every other of the major vampires is like, and there's Lestat's shitty mother who leaves him for decades at a time.
She's just not that into you, man.
No, I mean, she's like, honestly, she's like Kim Basinger in 8 Mile. Like, this is not a healthy relationship here.
No, it's very bad. This is, yeah, no.
Slim, will you go get me some cigarettes? Okay. Gabrielle suggests the idea at about this point, though. One of the times she's come back and they're like out to dinner or a opera or whatever. She's gone to town with him. Gabrielle suggests the idea of a vampire monarch, a leader for the vampires, you know? Here's the thing that occurred to me this time. What if, because I know Rollin likes playing with little pieces like this, like, oh, I take apart on a book where she didn't really follow up on a thought. What if Gabrielle doesn't, what if her story in Queen of the Damned is not true to the book storyline? What if she doesn't just take Lestat's part? What if she's like,
I thought this was a good idea. She's got a couple of points, like, not all men, but all men. Come on.
But have you considered, though, actually?
Have we considered killing all the men? Because, I don't know. That might be okay.
I mean, and genuinely, when you think about it, like, Akasha's going to keep the man that she likes, you know?
That's true. That's true. I mean, that's the way any of us would do it.
Okay, I really hadn't thought about it until the TV show. And in the TV show, they do the great thing where there's like the trap doors and the trick buttons and, you know, this thing swings open and suddenly there's a room where coffins are or whatever, right? In the book, though, Lestat mentions already in this section that in places where they stay for any time at all, he gets a coffin made and he hides it in places within the house. It's not exactly laid out as the secret room, but I mean, again, you can see how they got there. Well, what does that mean? He hides it in a place in the house, you know?
Yeah, like he likes the comforts of a home, but also wants to be safe and secure within that home. And I think too, it's like one of those like nods to just the whole, you know, legendary tropes of it all.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk about Nikki's epitaph here. I like, first of all, that Lestat, when he's writing the story to Marius later, when he's Banksying it up, that's what he carves in, epitaph for Nikki.
Poor Nikki.
I mean, Lestat says it himself. Gabrielle's like, "Are you mad? Are you going to go take revenge or whatever?" when he finally learns of what happened. And he's like, "Why would you think that? I mean, I left him there with these people to take care of him and assumed that they would do the right thing." What do you think about this conclusion to Nikki's story?
Oh, it's fucking tragic. I mean, and it is. I mean, it's the first of many of Armand's science experiments on other vampires too, you know, like it's just horrifying. But I do think that he's right to end it. I mean, as awful as that sounds, he's not built for this. He's not made for this. He wasn't made for this. He wasn't made for this life before he was turned. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
he was suicidal. He was sad, mad, all of that before. So he was not going to endure, sadly. He was not going to be a vampire that was going to live through the ages. He just was not. And I hate it. I hate it for him, but I'm glad that they celebrated him. I'm glad that they did it in the old ways. Also, I don't know that Armand didn't just drag him out in the woods and light him on fire.
Right.
We might be getting a real romanticized version of this fucking story.
I mean, I will say, but it's not Armand that writes any of the letters, right?
No, that's very true.
You do sort of assume at that moment that, and I can't remember her name. What is it, Helene or something like that? Eleni, there you go. But Eleni is old enough. I don't think Armand could just domineer her like that exactly.
I mean, I could see her maybe needing to soften the story, but she tells him about the hands, which is the most fucked up thing.
But she also tells him, like, hey, you got to understand, this isn't a big deal with us.
Right.
We could put a little blood and put them right back on.
Put them right back on. Slap the hand right back on.
Which, by the way, is foreshadowing. We're going to get some of that in the second book, in the next book, guys. So there's a moment. I want to go ahead and go to this from part 7. Lestat is talking to Marius, and they're talking about how Marius was surprised that Lestat went into the earth so early.
Mm-hmm.
But Lestat has a thought. He said, if only Nikki had gone down into the earth instead of into the fire. But I couldn't think of Nikki now. Okay, we've speculated before, because there's this whole thing hanging out there in the show where they have a crypt for Nikki under the theater.
Yes.
Why do you need a crypt for a pile of ashes?
You don't.
As a matter of fact, you very specifically you don't want them. You want to scatter the ashes.
Yeah, exactly. I think that
I don't know.
We might get a very different twist on this twisted story in this next season, which is
and it would be one of those things in keeping with some of the other changes that they've made. Nikki's is a story, if they stay true to the novel, Nikki's is a story of mental health, right? It's of mental unhealth, I should say. And it would be sad for it to end as not unreal, don't get me wrong, but sad for it to end as tragically as it does here in the novel.
Yeah.
So if Rollin and team could think of a way, without changing the overall trajectory of this thing as it's going on 8 seasons down the road or whatever, but at the same time, they could show a modern answer. Hey, here's what you do when someone is mentally unwell. Here's how you can cope with that and how you can still find, joy and happiness in a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And we don't cut off their hands. So that they can't play their violin.
Throw them away.
Keep them in a little box by your bed.
I mean, maybe they won't bring Nikki back. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but I get the sense that that's one of those places.
Easter egg, but they're not the type to like, give us a false Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
The Easter eggs feel like Easter eggs. Something like that feels like it's done with intent.
100%. That's exactly the way to say it. It did absolutely felt like it was done with intent. Okay. So basically, I mean, Gabrielle is there for Lestat when he gets this news and she knows that it's going to destroy him. But at the same time, immediately she's pulling away too. Mm-hmm. And she goes, hey, just go into the jungle with me. Why don't you? Which is like, I mean, on the one hand, it's sort of sweet.
It is, but it's not. The sweeter thing would be like, let me stay with you and help you deal with your emotions. Instead of, hey, let's do everything my way. Come with me and we'll pretend none of this happened. Just.
I find if you bury your problems in the jungle dirt, then it's not a problem anymore, Lestat.
It's just ignore it. Shove it way down.
I love though. Okay, so as you and I've talked about this in the past, like at our age, we're parenting our parents sometimes in different ways, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here's one where Lestat gets it. The truly terrible part was this. She really didn't want anything of me. Mm-mm. She was asking me to come because she felt the obligation to do so. What she really wanted was to be free. Like, she does not expect. This is one of those. I mean, do you want to come with me to see my little vampire thing? And they're like, no, you can just do it on your own. Yeah,
I'm fine.
She was not expecting a yes.
No, she was hoping for a no. She's like,
Okay. If you're Lestat, she reads him the riot act because he's about to go to Louisiana and take care of his father.
Yeah.
And she's like,
well,
you're going to do what?
Yeah, I love it. But also, like, again, the audacity. Also, she hid all of this from him. Buried this shit in the yard. Like, you can't know about all this that's going on, because I know, even though I won't support you, even though I won't be there for you, even though I won't.
You'll make me feel bad when I go to the jungle. Then I'll be staring at that waterfall and be like, oh, fucking Lestat.
Poor guy. He's real sad. You're going to make it a bummer. You're going to bum out my vacation. So awful. But yeah, no, she's really harsh with him about it. And I understand his need to go and his need to do, I understand that. It's also his last connection to his human life, his very last, last connection to his old world, to his humanity.
My father and I had a complicated relationship.
Mine too.
My dad never dragged me out of a monastery, right? My dad never, shooed away the theater troupe that I had decided to run away with, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, Lestat's dad beat him. My father never beat. I mean, that's not entirely true. My father did. He spanked me in ways that were absolutely over the line, but it was a long time ago. It was only a couple of times, right? He didn't do it out of a place of hatred, is what I'm saying. And I think Lestat's father did at times do it out of a place of hatred,
or a fear that because Lestat wasn't like the others, that like.
Well, so but
that
it's
anger
also
of you being different. But
I think it's even more. The thing that occurred to me this time is it's also a scarcity problem, right? Mm-hmm. Like the family is beyond all of their past glories. Not even in his lifetime, but like in the dad's grandfather's lifetime, they had already run out of money, right? And now here he is, and he's got I think he has 3 sons or 4 sons.
Yeah, there's at least,
and it's like Lestat's the youngest, so it's like, I've got nothing for you, which always struck me as, why wouldn't they let him go to the church?
Right.
I mean, I guess the argument that they make in the books is that
it's the
that he wouldn't be like a cardinal or something, right? He'd just be a priest because they don't have the money to bribe and get him up high in the church and their nobility. Yeah, I'm like, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, but I say all of that to say this: I didn't have the same row to hoe with my dad that Lestat had with his. But when my father got dementia, like those former wrongs. Like the body there now that I was serving had not done me any of those wrongs,
Right.
Like, and I was honoring my mother as well as my father, but I was also honoring the things that my dad had done right in that moment and trying to be there. I think about shaving him, man. Like I shaved his, I trimmed his neck and stuff one day, like, cause mom couldn't do it very well. She couldn't see well enough to get in there and do it. And it's like, it was a really beautiful moment. Dad doesn't know that and won't ever know that. It wasn't for him though.
Right.
It was for me.
Absolutely.
And I feel like Lestat is not nice to his father once they get to New Orleans finally. No. Right? Like he's a shit the whole time mostly. But at the same time, I do understand his need to do that, particularly after all of his family's killed. All of his brothers are killed in the revolution and their families and everything. So his father's the only one that's saved, basically. And it's like, I've got one last, what do I have? A year or two maybe with this old man that I can cling on to my human life before I'm done with it forever.
Someone who remembers what I was, who I was before, Man,
there's that stupid fucking Sunscreen song from Baz Luhrmann. You know what I'm talking about, Ashley, from like 99, where they did the Everybody's Free song from Romeo and Juliet. Everybody's free to feel good or whatever. Then in between, the verses were not song, it was just spoken word, and it was like advice. It was like somebody's graduation speech or something. The class of 99 wear sunscreen. You don't remember this?
I don't.
Okay. Anyway, somewhere
Why
in
don't
there,
I remember that?
There's the whole, go look it up sometime.
I will.
All the advice is great. It's funny, but it's also like very poignant. But there's a line in the middle of it where he talks about hanging on to the people who knew you when you were young. Mm-hmm. Because and like the older you get, the more important that will be. Like most friendships fade away, but the few that you can hang on to, it's really important to do so, because it does matter just to have the framing on your own existence, right?
Right.
Marius says, we're going to get to it in just a minute, but Marius says at the end of his story, basically like, hey, I'm very sorry, but none of this means anything, and none of us have any purpose, actually.
Yeah.
We're not here for any reason, right? But like that is... I do think what he's really trying to say, and what he has found for himself, is like you have to make your own reason, right? You have to find your own purpose and build it if you have to, imagine it if you need to, whatever. But anyway, I found it poignant. And again, this is one of those moments where like it puts me over the line with Gabrielle. I love the character of Gabrielle, but in this moment I'm like, fuck you, go on to the jungle.
Yeah, do what you're going to do anyway. Ma'am, just do what you're going to do anyway. You don't have to make him feel bad about what he's going to choose to do. Because it's not out of wanting to protect him and protect him from how this might disappoint him or upset him or hurt him. It's not about that. It's about her not wanting his father to get any sort of closure with the situation. Like that's what it's about.
And also 50 years from now, when I see you again, I'll remember that you went and said goodbye and said good, whatever, took care of him, and I didn't go say goodbye or didn't give a shit. And like again, I think this is all about saving herself from guilt.
Yeah, this is
like if we both run off and just be carefree vampires, then I don't have to.
Then none of us has to feel shitty. Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting look at family, like dysfunctional family dynamics that exist even if you're fucking vampires.
All right. So here's what's crazy though, is so she makes the argument, she's like, don't go to Louisiana. And then in her leaving, she effectively makes it where he wouldn't have gone if Marius didn't save him and it didn't all go like it does in part 7 here. He is so depressed and ends up driving himself down into the garden in somebody else's house. In my mind, it was his house, the house they were staying in Cairo or whatever. Like he just goes down into the garden, but he doesn't. He throws a guy over a fence, and then he runs through the streets for a while, and he finds somebody else's garden and goes down into it.
What a surprise.
Like an abandoned house or whatever. Anyway, he says here, though, I couldn't rise if I wanted to. I couldn't move at all, yet I didn't die. I just wasted like those tortured beings in the walls under Les Innocents. Okay. So here, I think, is something that we've gotten to in the TV series as well. We saw the vampire in the beginning of season 1 that like had faded into dust, and Louis touches him and the body just disintegrates. We've got all of the people under the theater that are in the tombs. Like, what's the deal with them? The Coven, when they were under Les Innocents, they had people in the novel entombed. What's the deal there? Marius says it later when he's talking to Lestat about going to ground. If you aren't strong enough and no one comes to help you, you're fucked down there. Yeah. So 100%. They can die eventually of starvation, effectively. Yeah. They'll weaken until nothing. This is interesting. I'm reading the Necroscope, or I just finished the 3rd book in the Necroscope series by Brian Lumley. And one of the things that comes up in his books a lot is even the graves of vampires, if they're not burned and scattered and beheaded in the whole 9 yards, even the graves can hold the seed that might eventually leach into somebody else and become, another vampire. So like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty cool, honestly.
And awful,
that concept.
But I like that idea. I love it.
So, but the point here, though, is Marius says it's kind of necessary for someone to be truly old. If you're going to live centuries and centuries, then you're going to go to ground eventually. But
everyone does.
If you do it too early or with too weak blood,
you won't be able
nobody
to pull
knows
yourself
where
out.
And so unless somebody comes to save you, honestly, I think the implication is here that if Marius hadn't come, I mean, maybe not right away, maybe Lestat would have had one more chance with a burglar above or something like that. But I think the implication is that if Marius hadn't come to get him, that's why Marius comes to get him, I think. Otherwise, Marius just would have waited. Hey, in 50 years, he'll wake up and then he'll come get me then.
Yeah. Give him some time to get his shit together, and then I don't have to deal with the dramatic a sad, dramatic Lestat sack.
I don't remember this so much from the Interview with the Vampire novel, but here specifically, Lestat talks about hearing Marius's heart. He didn't know it was a heart, but he talks about, it's like the stamping of a giant, or something, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on. And then finally he realizes it's a presence. It's someone else's heart. I said Marius's heart like a kick drum.
I wonder too, like, it's just like him being so ancient and just having such a physical and metaphysical presence, it's a really cool way to let us know how strong and different this vampire is from the other vampires we've seen so far. Even from Armand. I mean, he's very, very different.
It's a
from
whole
Armand.
different level.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a whole different level.
And he's a whole adult. Like, he's a grown ass man vampire. Like, that's also one of the first like adult vampires we've seen aside from Gabrielle, like
they've all been like 20-year-olds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily their best version of themselves yet,
Yeah, okay, so I said it earlier, but genuinely this whole opening from when Marius like literally digs into the ground and raises him up until the next time Lestat wakes up, he's on the ship and they're like going into the harbor or whatever. But it's so over the top with his descriptions of Marius and this boat that they're on and the whole experience. I understand he's Prince Lestat. He is a straight up princess in these sections though.
It's pretty hilarious.
Lestat says, I felt an overpowering attraction to him and the sense of peace in me expanded. Ashley, you ever had anybody make you feel that way?
That's some Bridgerton shit right there is what that is. Oh.
The overwhelming, and the sense of peace in me expanded. Okay, so listen.
He's
this time it occurred
just
to me.
excited that it's an adult. He's needed a grown-up really bad. He's like, I feel peace. Maybe someone will help me make better decisions in my life.
Daddy.
Dad.
It occurred to me this time that Marius is like a Willy Wonka figure. Like he's got a zoo filled with exotic creatures. He's got a crazy art collection. He's got a little army of boys that are painting for him, villagers that honor his coming and going.
Oh my God.
It's a big secret at the end of the tour. Like,
you won the golden ticket, Lestat.
well, and Lestat even asks him, like, why me? Surely other people have asked before. And he's like, nobody ever really wants to seek the truth, actually, Lestat.
Turns out most people enjoy being a vampire and just shut up and get on with it.
yeah, that's... But Marius tells him he didn't expect you to go to Earth so soon. Most of us experienced that first death much later, after a century, maybe even two. What's interesting is in the show, it is much later, right? Because if you think about it, he doesn't go to ground. Well, he says he goes to ground before he goes to Louisiana, right? For like 70 years he was in the Earth is what he says in the show.
Yeah.
Okay. But that would be... he's almost a century older in the show than he is. Yes.
Yeah. But I love that the big lesson here and that Marius is trying to teach him and is like, you gotta live a life. Like, your whole thing is you haven't lived yet, sir. And I know you think you have, but you haven't. You've lived. He was like, you were in Paris and it's the same thing we were joking about, Joel. Like, you were in Paris for like 4 months, buddy. Like, calm down, You and Nikki were hanging out for 6 weeks before you guys took off to Paris. So let's all just like pump the brakes and not act like you've lived a lifetime of a person, because you haven't yet.
I mean, I assume when you and I are doing this for the 20th season of the Immortal universe, when we're both in our 60s,
I can't
that
wait.
We're going to feel the exact same way, right? It'll be like, can you imagine how much we thought we had accomplished when we started this show?
We were so young.
I know my mom feels that way, right? Like, she looks back on herself when she was my age and she's like, God, I was just getting started.
Right, right. Absolutely. I mean, that's about aging. That's what aging and growing is. And even a vampire needs to mature, and that's, the whole thing, that dichotomy between your physical age, and your, like, the age you are when you turn into a vampire, and then the age that you become, but there's still a piece of you that is that age forever, and I think that that's something that I didn't really get in my head until the show, and thinking about Claudia being stuck forever in like a purgatory of puberty and like the fuckery of that, you know, and that really helped me see how our vampires like natural age when they were humans kind of still weighs into their, you know, immortal life.
It's interesting to me that Lestat is surprised that Marius just wants to talk to him. He says, I thought that the older ones would dispense with speech altogether, which is interesting because this has come up in other universes as well. People talk to like ancient characters and they're like, oh, I thought you'd just do everything telekinetically.
Right.
But Marius lays it out. He's like, man, thoughts are imprecise. If I open my mind to you, there's no telling what you might read.
Oh yeah, you don't want. You might find out things I don't want you to find out, and you might interpret things in a way that I don't expect. Yeah, I know.
That's the thing that strikes me is like, no, let me tell you a tale, right? Instead of just giving you information.
Also, Anne was probably thinking about, you know, about the television rights in the future. Right? You know, nobody wants to.
No, there's going to be
like,
dialogue,
just us
motherfucker.
being like, we're talking about this book really hard right now.
Yeah, and we all do our best, like Patrick Stewart impression. Okay, this knowledge may change you somewhat, Marius says. That's all knowledge ever really does, I suppose. Boy, what a good fucking line. That is all knowledge ever really does, right? It'll change you.
Marius
it doesn't solve the world. It doesn't change the world either. It just changes you.
It changes you.
Because the knowledge is already out there, and like the reality is as it is. You just don't understand all of it. So when you have some new unlock, it's not like I was trying to explain the concept of attraction theory to Remy the other day, and my 15-year-old. And I'm like, listen, this is not magic. You're not actually causing the universe to do things. You just are seeing patterns when you tell your brain to search for them. That's the deal. And he's like, but I mean, isn't that making it happen? Anyway, that's Marius is like, no, it's just going to change you. Okay.
And that's important. And that's just as important as changing the world. You know, that's just as important.
But I love it because he sets all of that up and then he tells him the whole story and he gets to the end. And it is unsatisfying for Lestat. He's like, fuck.
That's it? Damn it. Maybe I should play a violin about it.
100%. All right. So we get our first look at Akasha and Enkil, though. Like, I do like that he doesn't tell him the whole story first. He's like, you want to see those who must be kept. Let me go show them to you.
You'll be distracted this whole time if I don't show you the prize first. So let me show you so that you'll listen to my story.
Okay, so realistically, I don't know how they're going to do this all for the TV series. I feel like there's so much in this book that at first I was convinced we were only going to get one season. But I think to myself, how can you get to this before the 7th or 8th episode?
Yeah.
How can you unveil them as statues in half in 4 episodes? I don't know. Maybe they can. Rollin's great. I have faith in the team. But I really think that this could be our like season finale, you know, is them in this form and him with the existential dread that like, if I live long enough, I'll be like that too.
Right. And then in my brain, the epilogue of this is a lot longer. In my brain, it was a lot longer. So really, actually, the crossover story we get in New Orleans is actually pretty short. So I don't know. It feels like we might get 2 seasons out of all of this. There's so much more going on than I remembered. As far as like, I mean, this whole section with Marius could be, you know, has to be an episode in and of itself.
I absolutely think that Marius gets his own episode.
Yeah,
right?
He would have to.
We basically do what we did with Armand in season 2, where you get him with Daniel for a little while and he tells the story of meeting Lestat and et cetera, right? In 40 minutes, you could tell the story of Marius as a first take.
Yeah.
With the idea that we're going to get more of this later from him and other characters.
Yeah,
right?
It feels like at least part of this book is going to go into season 3. Even if it's just the tail end of it to kind of bridge into like
the Queen of the Damned
the Queen
of it
of the
all.
Damned. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and what we have to remind ourselves is there are large sections of the Queen of the Damned that are effectively like what people did while Vampire Lestat was going on.
Right.
So
So
like,
it really depends on how
Yeah.
they decide to how they decide to tell the story, you know, if they're going to tell it chronologically or if it's going to be we're going to get all of this and then we'll flash back and restart the thing. So who knows? It'll just depend on how they choose to tell it, I guess.
super excited though to see the King and Queen.
Oh, I'm so excited to see Marius too. Like,
well, yes, absolutely. But honestly, we always say like Aaliyah was like the one very satisfying thing about the Queen of the Damned film, and I feel like when we first see them as statues, it's not terrible, but it's not the perfection that I had in my mind. And I know that's asking a lot, but I've seen what this show has done with effects that I didn't at first. Like, for instance, I think about their burning effect.
Yeah.
The way that it ashes out. I didn't love it at first, and it grew on me over time. And the way they use it in the show, I think, is actually perfect.
Yeah.
I want to see that level of detail and attention and thought put into what do these two characters look like in their like waxen statuesque form when they're in this permanent frozen status.
It's a really exciting thought, because the thing is that Roland has been thinking about this probably as long as we have, you know, and so like that's what's really great about this showrunner and like the people working on the show is just that I know it's going. I feel like I know it's going to be satisfying. I've got confidence in that.
Oh, I'm absolutely with you. Let's talk about Marius's story for a little while, like his actual story. Once they sit down and he goes through his whole thing. First of all, I wrote a line here because I think it's fantastic. Marius goes, "I was an emotional teenager at 40, believing myself to be invincible, and here's why that's been great for me ever since." Like that's basically how he lays out his shit, and it's like, Marius, it's so funny because he's chiding Lestat on the one hand for being like naive and brash and just going in, but he literally lays out in the beginning like, I couldn't have imagined something bad would happen to me. Nothing ever had, and it really hasn't since, honestly.
Yeah, actually, to be honest, you know, aside from everyone I love leaving me, and
he's so it's self-centered is what it is, honestly, but like,
I mean, that's him.
Self-satisfied, I guess, is that makes it more of a positive than self-centered.
I mean, he's very self-centered. He's very, his story. I mean, he and Lestat are very like that, very much like that. In very different. It comes across in very different ways because Marius is like mature and he has this like I know everything kind of vibe to him. Like I'm just super wise, whereas Lestat's like, no, I'm right. But both of them are the same. You know, they have that same quality. Like I'm very, very knowledgeable and wise, and I know the ways to get things done. And they both feel that way. They just show it in two different ways.
So I love him being dragged, first of all, he's drugged by Mael and then he's dragged out of town and up into the north to nowhere.
Story. Like what a fucking brilliant idea.
And again, this is why, like, I think like genuinely tell it in an episode this season, but just go ahead and give us a Marius and Pandora spinoff. Like tell stories of these ancient vampires through the thing that occurred to me in this time is like, have him correcting the Talamasca archives on his own story.
Ooh, that would be very fun.
Right? Like,
and also very Marius.
Right? You got all of this wrong, let me tell you.
No, let me correct.
Here's the things that I memorized from the library in Alexandria. But anyway, he's confronted by a world with different rules than the one that he'd believed existed, right? He meets the old god of the oak, and first of all, he doesn't believe it all the way until they literally throw him in there and close the door behind him.
Well, because it sounds crazy. Let's be honest. This sounds crazy.
I'm super excited to see this all play out, though. That stuff in particular, the old burned god in the oak.
Yeah.
All that is so evocative and first of all, terrifying. But I mean, like again, like look at the special effects that they did on some of the vampire creatures in Midnight Mass that we're going to be talking about soon. Ooh. And I think, the old god in the oak will totally work, man.
Yeah.
Like, you could do that.
I loved this I love this story, this whole like tale of how he becomes a vampire, and and it's so like so vivid in my mind. I can see this forest, I can see that glade, I can see that tree. Like it's one of the really 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 brilliantly written sections for me, as far as like Anne's work goes, because it's just so like I could smell things. You know what I mean? Like that's how well it's written for me.
Yeah. I mean, and the giant wicker man full of bodies.
Yes! Oh,
like,
oh God.
Yeah.
That's so it's so
Dude,
scary.
So this is like a little glimpse. I feel like we get 2 or 3 of these in Queen of the Damned, at least, where we see scenes of like vampires being these like elder gods, where they're ripping apart, crowds of bodies. But like to see Marius do it here a little bit after he's turned is interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love though that like he's made a vampire, and the guy goes, "All right, they're gonna feed you a bunch," and that's awesome. But then immediately you got to be like,
Bye.
"Get the fuck out of here and don't even worry about those dudes." And he's like, "Well, what are they gonna do with you?" And he's like, "Oh, they're gonna come down here and burn me. Don't even worry about it." Yeah, but like, it is interesting though. And then immediately he gets away. Oh, I also like that we're in the middle of this like 4-chapter story from Marius about his life and experience. And then he goes, "I met this man and he told me a tale." And so the old guy in Egypt begins to tell the story of Akasha and Inkle. Like there's like layers on layers. It's like we're watching fucking, what was the Christopher Nolan movie? Not Interstellar, the one with the fucking dreams. I started to say Interstellar. I was like, yeah, Inception. There we go, Inception. Yeah, it's like kick it down a layer, man. I don't know how they're going to do this. I don't know how they're going to do this in the show. And like we just said, like I do feel like Marius's story should be almost a whole episode.
Yeah, easy.
Well, then how do you tell Akasha's story, right? Like you've got to tell. I think this season Lestat needs, and the audience needs to hear the story of Akasha and Inkle being created for them to really make sense on the throne, and for us to really worry about what's coming in a Queen of the Damned season. We have to know.
Well, and to get everyone invested in the next season too. I mean, it is you get more of the story then, but in Queen of the Damned, but even just to get an intro to it is important.
Yes. I think they at least got to lay the groundwork for it. But I don't know how you're going to structure that in the show. I really don't.
Thank God we don't have to figure it out.
Right. I will say this.
We get to speculate.
I'm so excited to get to know Inkle. Like he's a mover in the novel. He actually was like a driving force for their story.
Yeah.
In the Queen of the Damned movie, he might as well not exist. And the way that we think about it, he's just the other half of the couple that gets left behind. Yeah. But it's not that way. Like he was a king in his own right.
Yeah, he had agency and a whole like personality, and that's definitely something we didn't get in the film version of Queen of the Damned. He was literally just there.
Well, look at what the show has done with Louis and how they've even expanded like Santiago already in season 2. Like I'm saying, I think this is an interesting role for a good actor, just waiting to be, our surprising favorite thing of season 3 or 4.
That's something really exciting to think about. Like, who is going to be my Santiago of next season? Like, who's going to be the one that surprises me and excites me and thrills me that I don't expect or see coming?
So Marius gets done with his story. He's like, and that's really all I have to tell. And now you need to go live a life.
Yeah.
Lestat, you can stay here for a while. Don't worry about it. But you need to go and live a life. And so I'm going to leave you now and let you think about all these things. And Lestat says...
And behave yourself.
Yeah. Lestat says there were 1,000 statements of his that I wanted to reiterate. And I just think about... I mean, this is like the scene in The Matrix where Morpheus is like, "Let me tell you what the Matrix is, Neo." When he got done and Neo's like, "Whoa, I'm a battery." If Lawrence Fishburne got up and was like, "I'll be back in a month. Don't worry about it."
Yeah. So take some time
deuces.
Take some time to wrap your head around this. I'll be back. Don't go downstairs.
Anyway, I'm just saying we all have built Marius up as like this great father figure, and he's a shitty dad.
Yeah,
is all I'm saying. He's
no one's a good parent in this series.
no better as a teacher than Lestat is, honestly.
Yeah, no.
So, but then immediately, so Lestat goes to bed. He wakes up. When I opened my eyes, I had an idea. And he's like, hey,
Go
that
back to
violin
sleep,
that I
you
got
asshole.
shipped, that violin I got shipped, I should just take that downstairs because Akasha and Inko have never heard a violin sound before. That's a new invention. So let me go play that thing for him.
There's
it's
nothing
a terrible
worse.
idea.
There's nothing worse on this planet, by the way, than someone playing a violin that doesn't know how to play a violin. Like, that's the worst instrument you can fuck around with. Like, the worst. It's the worst sound.
What I believe the word is caterwailing. Yeah. Like, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it is. That's a choice, buddy.
It's
But he's
interesting.
sure he's
though.
going to be good at it. He's like,
Well,
I don't know how
okay.
to play, but it's going to be fine.
It did occur to me this time. We only have his word for it that it was good, right? Like
very
he says
true.
it was good, and it did wake Akasha up. But
Your
what if
ears-
she was literally like, "Stop
Shut the
that.
fuck up. Your ears could be bleeding for a lot of reasons, Lestat, and one of them might be your violin
You
playing.
did that, Lestat. Yeah, this was you. You did. Why do you keep punching yourself, Lestat?
Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself.
Man, okay. So the idea, this scene where Inko wakes up. First of all, the scene where Akasha wakes up and lets him drink and then drinks from him too.
Yeah.
Lestat describes it as like a circuit. He could see the circuit of energy as all of his blood
really
went into
cool.
her and all of her blood went into him. Yeah, I think that is fascinating. But then Inko is like, no, thank you, please,
Sir?
actually.
Sir, you're taking some liberties with my wife.
You can't talk that way to my wife, actually. Yeah, he kicks him out of the Woolworths here. And stay out. It's funny. It's funny though, because like Lestat already thinks of himself as effectively like invincible.
Yes.
And then he's drank from Marius already at this point. And he's talked about how much stronger he is. And yet Inkle is literally just gonna crush that dude's head.
Yeah.
Like he was the old SNL skit.
I pinch your head. Exactly. Yeah. It is. Well, everyone needs to know their place. Like, know your place, sir, because you might think you're tough, but this dude can crack your head like a walnut.
Literally like a walnut. Like, unless Marius had showed up.
Yeah, it was not going to be good because you took some liberties with his wife.
What's the scene in Pulp Fiction where they're like, "Oh, a foot massage ain't nothing. The way I do a foot massage."
Yeah, exactly. Over a foot massage?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. He did not want any of this. I'm so excited. Again, I'm so excited to see all this play out on film. Like, seeing them move in that statuesque fashion and watch Marius like slowly mold them back into place and stuff. I think that's going to be freaking awesome on camera.
Yeah, there's a lot visually that happens in these scenes that are going to be really fun to watch play out on the screen.
Yeah, 100%. All right. And then after that, he's like, "No, but really now, dude, you got to get the fuck out."
Go on, get it. Because
Marius is like, "Hey, you remember how I said you could take your time? You can't take your time, actually.
No, you gotta go.
You took your time.
Yeah.
No, you got to go.
You gotta go. Go on, get. Because this guy might walk up the stairs and just crack your skull at any time.
It is a sad end to this. And I remember the first time that I read this, I was like, especially knowing already what had happened with Interview with the Vampire, I was like, oh man, it's going to be a while now. It's going to be 150 years or whatever before he sees Marius again at this point. Like, that's so sad. But Marius isn't sad at all, honestly.
No, because nothing.
Time is just I cannot wait to see this in our show where the Maharats and the Makars and the Mariuses of our universe are like, oh, you poor centuries.
Yeah.
What's centuries to an immortal, my friend? Like,
my sweet summer child. You've been alive for a couple hundred years.
yeah. I had a boyfriend once that was that long. Anyway, you're right. This is a great section of the book, and there is a reason why we were all. It's interesting because it mirrors so much of the Mayfair book, right? Like the first book in particular, The Witching Hour, has those files of the Talamasca where you get all of the stories of the various Mayfair heirs.
The best.
It's so good. It's so good. And we get sort of that here. The other thing is it's a little bit of a glimpse into Queen of the Damned when we're going to get Makari's story, and we're going to get Cayman's story, and we're going to get Pandora, a little bit of Pandora, and we're going to get Mael's story, and on and on and on. We see all of these people.
It's such a great tease, like a tease of what's to come. Especially, I mean, we've all read the books, so we know what's coming, but it gets you really, really excited to get to the next thing. This read, I've really enjoyed this read of the Vampire Lestat. I always enjoy reading this book. I always love this book, but this read, I've had a blast reading it again.
It's my favorite novel. It's not somebody on Facebook the other day was talking about favorite movies versus best movies.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely a different thing.
Absolutely.
And so is this. This isn't the greatest novel ever written. It's my favorite novel ever written, though. There's so much in it.
Yeah.
And there are highs and lows of so many different kinds. And so much of what we love about this series overall is glimpsed and sampled here.
Yeah. Well, it's the first time we're getting to meet Lestat for real, like we're meeting, this is him. This is Lestat, like
in all his terrible glory.
Interview is not the true version of him. So it is nice to get to meet him,
I love it. I love this book. I'm with you, Ashley. I've really enjoyed revisiting it, and I'm excited to wrap it up with you all in a couple of weeks. So here's what we've got left in 2 weeks now. We'll do the epilogue for Interview with the Vampire. We'll talk about that chapter where he revisits those events, and then we'll do the epilogue. I love the title. It's called Dionysus in San Francisco, 1985.
Yes. Here we go. Here we go, kids.
So we'll do that next in 2 weeks, and next week we were going to cover Only Lovers Left Alive, the Jim Jarmusch film starring what's his name, Hiddleston.
Yep, Tim.
What is his name?
Tom.
Tim?
Tom.
I was like, Tim isn't right. Yeah,
Tim is not right.
Tom didn't feel right either because I was like, no, Tom is Holland's name, but Tom is Hiddleston. Tom Hiddleston.
Hiddleston.
There you go. It's with an I. Anyway, Loki. Fucking Loki's in it, all right?
In it. We love Loki.
But also, what's her name?
I can't think of anything.
Not Gwendolyn Christie.
Tilda Swinton.
Tilda Swinton. Yes, I've got Gwendolyn Christie. I've got Gwendolyn Christie on the brain. She is they just announced the other day Civilization 7, the new Civilization game. I don't know if you've ever played that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, Tilda Swinton is the one that's in this movie. Tilda Swinton and Tom Hiddleston. It's all the T's, y'all. Tilda and Tom.
Tilden.
Civ 7 is the new game coming out in February. I'm a big fan of the Sid Meier's Civilization series, and the new one, every time they do a new game, they come up with a new narrator for the game as well.
Awesome.
And there's a lot of speculation on who it was going to be. Like, I'm trying to think of who the last one was, and I can't remember even. But anyway, Gwendolyn Christie narrated this one.
Is the winner. I love her.
So good,
She's
man.
fantastic.
They did some like gameplay footage or whatever this week, and I was sharing it with my 16-year-old son, and we were like, "This is gonna be so good."
I love it. That's fantastic.
We're gonna play it so much on the Xbox. Anyway, okay, so go away and watch that. I don't think that it's streaming anywhere. I looked the other day. I haven't been able to find this on any of the services. Maybe it's somewhere that I'm not aware of. But you can rent it on Amazon and Apple and all those regular digital.
The usual spots.
For like $3.99. Yeah. So, and from everybody who, if you haven't seen this before, from everybody who has seen it,
it's
is like
favorite,
one of their top ones.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be well worth the rent.
I am really excited because also we hadn't watched Love at First Bite, but this is one I'm excited to watch that I haven't seen yet.
I watched a video earlier today where they were discussing the Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Oh, yeah.
And they've talked about it for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then one of the co-hosts goes, "Listen, this is a very bad movie, and I hate it, actually. I didn't like it when it came out, and I've watched it now, and I hate it. It's terrible, and I hate it. You can like this very bad movie, and that's fine, okay? But It is a very bad movie. So
That's
anyway,
hilarious.
anytime Ashley and I say something like that,
Oh,
you can like this very bad movie
we
just
love
as much
it.
as you want to.
We want you to love it. We want you to love what you love. We are not going to yuck your yum.
No, not
That
at
is
all.
not
man.
our way.
My favorite movie of all time is The Big Lebowski, and I know a lot of people think that movie is
so great.
TRASH trash. So we're all good. We're all good.
Who thinks that's trash?
I've got a friend who is like, there is nothing redeeming in that. It's like saying Half Baked is your favorite movie, and I'm like, listen, my friend, there's nothing wrong with Half
Half
Baked.
Baked
First
is
of
my
all, but
second
also
favorite movie.
it's not.
It's
but
not,
I do
but that'd
really
be
enjoy Half Baked.
that would be a funny
There's
reaction.
nothing wrong with Half Baked either. Anyway, all right, we will be back.
We'll be back.
Lots of fun stuff on the YouTube channel. Check out the Patreon if you are in a position to support the show like that. If not, just keep watching and liking and commenting. We thank you all so much for all of that.
We do.
Until we are back next week, we've been your hosts. I'm Joel,
I'm Ashley.
and we are the Articulate Coven. Thanks for listening to The Articulate Coven. If you enjoyed the show, check out our groups on Facebook and Discord. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Or find us at articulatecoven.com and wherever you listen to podcasts.